It's Auburn, Georgia week, the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Let's get after it.
Thanks. As of yesterday, we got in super late, obviously, on Sunday morning, and then got started on Auburn Sunday, and got a really good football team. Got a lot of respect for HUGH, gone against him for a lot of years. Obviously, the record may not indicate, but the record doesn't speak for what this team is. But they got a really good football team, and today we start on them. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, Coach, I'm sure as a football coach, when you go back and watch the film, there are moments where, whether it be a drop or a missed tackle, you feel like there might be the right play called, but execution might be lacking. Does your responsibility as a coach stop right there at execution, or is there a way as a coach that we can impact our execution rate, we can increase it?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
How do you go about executing better as a coach? When you feel like you've called the right play, just lacking execution, how do we increase the execution?
Yeah, you try to show them on tape and explain where we went wrong. You check your quality control of how much did we rep that, how much did we rep that versus that look. Did we do it enough that we can actually say they should have gotten it right? Because if you do everything once and you only get one look at it, which that's not what anybody does, that's not enough. But if you do everything 10, 20 times, you can't do as much. And so then you run out of, you get lower execution, but you get higher volume. And it's a constant balance between what you're doing and how well you execute. And plus, on defense, it's hard because you don't know what you're getting. You don't dictate the play. They dictate the play in the formation. You respond to it. So it's offense, defense, both. And there's great examples of really good execution, and there's great examples of poor execution.
Yeah, that question was kind of odd. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, is that if you want to be better at it, if you want to execute it better, you have to rep it. And Kirby then went into how that's different and how it matters. So I guess that's a little insight for anybody who doesn't already understand that. But I don't know. That question didn't do much for me.
Probably the most amazing thing Saturday was just the fourth down execution in a desperation situation. I just wonder, with regard to the slow starts and stuff like that, with this team, does it just need to play more desperate early as opposed to what they're doing right now?
I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that, Jeff. I mean, I can't sit here and say they need to play desperate. I think that's not a good choice of words to play desperate. I think they need to play aggressive and play loose, but I don't want to ever be playing in desperation. But, there was good execution. There was some good execution on third down. There was some poor execution on third down. Some of third down was knowing you have fourth down, which is not really the case in every game. That was a very different game to evaluate from a standpoint of the second half, because everything was very different than maybe a start of a game. It's hard to even evaluate because of that, because you had to throw the ball, you had to catch up. But certainly proud of the resiliency they showed to do it. But just as proud of same of that, I'm disappointed at the start of it, But like I said, we got to go get ready for Auburn, who's a really, really good football team.
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I mean, because to Kirby's point, if you know you have fourth down in your back pocket, then maybe you feel looser on third down. Well, what does that mean? That means that you're tight in the first place, right? That means that you're not playing fast and free, that you're not loose. And none of us can know why that's the case or why that was the case. Is it just that was the case against Alabama, or is it that's been the case all season? I think you can argue that a couple of different ways, depending on which game you look at. So there is no direct answer. The guys have to be loose, free, play confident, all those sorts of things. And as a fan, you just wish you didn't have to get behind the eight ball to make that happen, right? What was it Kirby said in years past? Elite don't get bored. And the way you don't feel nervous is you go out and you practice really well, and then you generally perform really well. And if we believe what Kirby says, and I do, because the one thing about Kirby is that he is obviously honest when he steps up here and answers these types of questions about practice and things, he'll tell you, we were awful, we were good, right? I think when Kirby steps to the podium, he comes with a purpose, and he's honest, and he will straight tell you. So if we believe him and they've been practicing well, then why would you be nervous? So there is no way to put your finger on it. It's that weird mix of stuff that comes together for team chemistry and how you show up and be primed and ready to go. And the cold hard truth of it is you have to work through that over the course of a season. You have to get into your routines. You have to figure out, all right, I learned my lesson here about this thing and I do it this way. Hopefully the Dogs can figure it out, but it's a very murky question. I think Kirby, he tried to answer it there, but it's a very odd sort of thing. Chemistry is a very weird thing. Starting fast is a very weird thing, because if you're too amped up, you're going to make mistakes. If you're not amped up enough, then you're going to not meet the challenge that's in front of you if the other team has a lot of juice. So it's challenging.
Yeah, to follow up on that a little bit, last year y'all converted third downs at almost 55%. This year it's at 33%. When you've looked at the tape through these first 4 games, is there any common threads that you've seen as far as issues? Is it teams defending y'all better? Just what are your thoughts on the offensive third downs so far?
A little bit lack of execution, little bit. Well, let me go back. The reason we were number 1 in the country in third downs last year is because we had very short distances. So we did something right on first and second down. And when we did have third downs, they were third down minimals because we converted a ton of plays on first and second down last year. So when you start backing it up on third down, it doesn't take a PhD to realize you're not going to be as good. So the inevitable question from the media is, why are you down on third down? Because they're longer. Why are they longer? Because you're not doing as well on first and second. And those all lead to execution. What can we do better to avoid third and longs? Because you will not be successful in third and longs. That's way more critical decision making than I can't just analyze third down. You got to analyze the whole thing.
And that's the absolute fact of it there. And I know it's a dull answer, but execution is the key. If you don't miss your block on the bubble route on first down, if you don't miss your block on the play action on second down and get your quarterback under duress and you end up with an incomplete pass, if it's all of those things. That's fairly straightforward. That's football 101. You have to execute the play that's called. And then if you do that, right, then you give yourself a better opportunity to be successful later in the downs.
Kirby, the missed tackles were a thing against Kentucky too. How much, looking at it, is you're one-on-one against a fast, slippery guy, you're not going to win that a lot, and how much of it is swarm, like not enough guys around the ball?
Yeah, we grade swarm, we chart swarm, which is effort to the ball by other people. Football is played in a way now that there are a lot of one-on-one battles and throws. It's not usually in a phone booth you miss the tackle, which means A, B, C gap. You're not like in those tight areas. We usually tackle well. We don't knock back tackle well, meaning when contact's made, does he stop and go backwards, or is he falling forward for 3 and 4 yards? That's been more our MO, is falling forward, not knock back tackling, which you got to do at a better rate. But I don't think it's a swarm problem. I certainly think that we tackle at a high rate historically, and tackling as a whole is down across all of college football. But certainly for us defensively, we want to tackle better, and some of that has to do with who you're playing against. And I think a lot of them that we had the other night were pretty good players.
Well, I mean, they're on scholarship too. That's the point. And with the way we play offense in today's college football, it's in space. And, well, your rebuttal may be, well, Georgia has the athletes to make those plays. They should be able to run fast enough to get there, and then they should be athletic enough to get the guy on the ground. In theory, absolutely. But you still have to go do it. And more important than that, I think, is what Kirby said about the knockback tackle. And you know exactly what he's talking about, where you grab a guy and spin him to the ground, but you throw him forward 2 yards, or some variant of that, as opposed to, think of the classic days, and you got to go all the way back, 20 years, right, almost, to think about a guy like Thomas Davis, who, when he hit you in space, he stopped you immediately or sent you backwards. And there were a few guys like that, right? Over the course of the years that Georgia has had. That's not what we are seeing so often. And Kirby, he makes it, again, he's telling you the truth across college football, in football in general, certainly in the NFL. Defense and tackling, it's laughable at times because people aren't doing it the way a lot of us were taught to do it growing up, which is head across, drive your feet, wrap up, right? Instead, you see a lot of I'm going to shoulder tackle and knock you over, or go for the big hit, or not breaking down and just flopping all over the place. It's technical stuff. And my personal rebuttal to that would be all we hear from Kirby and the guys that is different at Georgia. We do it different. So at that point, I think he's telling the truth that they do it differently. I think that on the whole, Georgia has been, as he pointed out, a better tackling team than most historically. And if an individual isn't doing it now, then it's on that individual. They have to work harder, be more disciplined about what they're trying to do. I mean, the Ryan Williams play the other night at the end of the game, the go-ahead touchdown, look, that's a 50-50 ball. If Humphreys gets his head around and sooner, maybe he makes a play on the ball, right? You're going to give those up. That's a fact of the game. The real sin was that then he couldn't recover with all of his athletic ability, break down and make the tackle. And even more so, the young kid, KJ Bolden, the true freshman, who came in there out of control, didn't make the tackle. They chased him down the field. That's what safeties do. If the corner gets beat, is out of position, the safety has to make the sure tackle. How many times the other night did you see Dan Jackson make a sure tackle? There's a difference. That's where being a freshman really shows up. And he'll get better. And Humphrey will get better. Remember, Humphrey hasn't played a whole lot. And you have to give credit to number 2 for Alabama. That's a simple fact. Again, the real sin there is that they didn't do what they needed to do after the catch, right? So, tackling, you just have to work on it. It's an effort thing. It has to be repped every day. If you are someone who enjoys target practice of any sort, I don't care if you're shooting a gun, a bow and arrow, whatever it is, you know that it is a perishable skill. If you aren't doing that, staying practiced, if you aren't training, then you're not going to be as good as you would be otherwise. Tackling is very, very much the same kind of thing. So, rep it, keep working on it, learn your lessons, try to improve it.
Kirby, curious with the running backs. I guess Nate Frazier started the season strong. I don't think he got in the other day. What's behind that? I guess just and with Roderick Robinson, how far away is he from getting back to help you guys?
Yeah, not sure on Rod. Nate's doing a great job.
Rod,
he's improving week to week. He takes a lot of pride in his performance. Like, he's a hard worker. He's very conscientious about it. Trevor's been playing really good, and Cash opened some things up for us the other night. We didn't get to play Branson near enough, but there's no explanation. He's not doing anything wrong. Really, the opportunity didn't present itself the other night because of the type game. I mean, it's very clear to see the type game it became after 3 series or 4 series. That wasn't going to be a patient, methodical game that might fit Nate more than what it turned into.
Coach,
Yeah, circumstance always matters right there, and it's a shame with a player like he and with Branson. They're explosive kind of players. You want to get them the ball, but at the end of the day, it turned into a game where it was on Carson's shoulder completely, and he had to make throws and get Georgia back in the game, and that's what happened. In my opinion, I think maybe we saw what the offense should be, which is more of a vertical attack, and then you run second to that, right? But that's for another video. This, though, is a situation where hopefully Frazier will have an opportunity to see the field more often, and it just comes back to who you trust. I mean, why was it Cash instead of Frazier? The number one thing I can think of there is just simply they trust him more in pass pro. We saw some of the plays that Cash made against Clemson in pass pro. And so you put a freshman out there, maybe he doesn't make those plays. So you're going to go with a sure bet there. But hopefully we'll see Frazier more as the season moves along.
Spoke after the game. Carson had similar comments about the high character revealed in adversity. What have you seen out of the team in these last 36 hours since that game?
Well, I hadn't seen them much. I mean, to be honest with you, Sunday is their dedicated, like their day off. And so I don't get to see a lot of them. I visited with a lot of guys, and they've been in good spirits. They're excited for an opportunity to go play. They know what's at stake with Auburn. It's a huge historic rivalry. This game has always been that way. And then, for me, when you turn the tape on and you watch their defense and their offense, outside of turnovers, got a really good football team. They've turned the ball over, and they've made that very clear that it's not – I mean, look, they got good players. They got good wideouts, quarterbacks playing better and better, and they've gone back and forth between them. But the focus for us is on them because I know what they can do. I know what kind of coach Hugh Freeze is. I know what kind of offense they got. I know their defensive coordinator. They're going to have a good team and be ready to play.
Yeah, and you don't need any kind of reminder, hopefully, Georgia fans, that Auburn – even though it was at Auburn, that's a difficult team to go play. They're going to have something for you. They're going to try to scheme you up under Hugh Freeze. That's what he's going to do. And, Kirby's not lying. They got players at wide receiver. They're young, but they've got guys that can hurt you. That defense, pretty doggone good, certainly at particular positions. So they're going to come ready to play. They've got pride too. I know I predicted them to be maybe the most underachieving team this season. Right now, that's looking pretty accurate, but that doesn't mean that they can't beat you. And what's more important for Georgia is they have to get their minds right. You can't let one loss turn into two. So you got to show up and do the things that you pride yourself on being able to do, which is put it behind you, move on to the next one, and then attack it as an individual game. That's what has to happen for Georgia. If they do that, Georgia should be okay in this game. If they don't, this thing could get ugly and turn into a 4-quarter game.
Kirby, did anything in general stick out to you from the Alabama film, just that maybe you didn't realize as it was going on, just anything in the last day and change?
Yeah, some things probably did. Some things that when you sit back and watch the tape pop up, but nothing that I would want to share or anything. I mean, we got guys that we got to do a better job as coaches, got to do a better job as players, got to do a better job as an organization, but nothing that worthy of sharing.
Internal business, that's fine. Everybody has it, and that's what a leader of a program should do, right? He's not going to put them on blast. He's going to step up and be like, yeah, and we're going to address it.
Yeah, how hard is it to get freshmen to play winning football, especially now that you're in this time of year where you're playing an SEC game every week, and this is the first time that they're being asked to sort of do that at this level?
Like who?
Well, KJ Bowman's the only freshman that played for you guys. It's me, FRAZIER, Joseph Jones, the other freshman you guys have brought in.
Yeah, those guys didn't really play much, so I don't know if I understand what you're asking. How hard is it to get them ready to play?
Yeah, to where they can help contribute for you guys.
Well, it's been an ongoing process since most of them got here mid-year. So we had 15 practices in the spring. We had summer. We had 26 practices in fall camp. Then we've had all the practices up till now. And I think those guys are continuing to get better. You always worry about a little bit of a lull in there when they hit a road of, well, am I going to play or am I not going to play? That's usually passed by now because we've played however many games, 4 games. So, they start to realize, oh, well, I might not be up right now. And that's when you get alarm bells ringing of, we may need them. So how hard is it to get ready to play? It's hard. You got to prepare. You got to get ready. You got to, and really in the cases that you get guys playing, it's usually a phenomenal talent or a need. A tremendous need, meaning you have a deficit at that position. He's got to go play. In the case of KJ, he's a talented player, and we have other talented players, but sometimes you have people in front of them, and it's about growth, development. We talked today, Jordan Davis hadn't really played at this point in time his freshman year. Quay Walker didn't touch the field. Eric Stokes didn't do anything. Lab was on the scout team. They were all pretty good players.
Yeah, and the questioner there had to be thinking about KJ, right? And he did mention him individually, as he's the only one that really played. But he also had to be thinking about how that showed up against Alabama and how do you get them ready to be better. And Kirby, as I told you, he is answering a very specific question, which is why he asked for clarification. And he was like, who? And then, well, and of course, then you get the generic answer of they're taking reps, they're doing the thing, it's a part of the process. All that's true. Kirby's not lying, but he's also not going to point out why didn't KJ Bolden make that tackle against Ryan Williams. If that's what the questioner wanted to know, that's what he should have asked. But if he's just generically asking how do you get freshmen to play better, then Kirby's answer, is what it is, truthful and spot on.
2 questions for you, Kirby. First, can you give us your assessment of your tight end room? And secondly, you're giving up 30 yards more per game at penalties than you did last year. What do you attribute that to?
I don't know. They gave a more heightened awareness. It was one of the big things going into the season. They were going to call defensive holding at a higher rate. I don't know what those statistics indicate. I know we've had it called a few more times than we have in the past. That was not a call the other night that was really called very much, but we are higher in penalties, and there's no great explanation, but there's also not a stat that says being higher in penalties equals losses. Usually your aggressive teams that get penalized play aggressive, and sometimes that works in reverse. So I don't have a great explanation for it. Tight ends, it's different because I'm evaluating that room based on that room. I'm not evaluating that room based on last year. It's a completely different room. Certainly have made some plays and left some plays out there, and continue to grow and get better is the hope. I got a lot of confidence in those guys' ability. We got good players in our tight end room.
Yeah, so on the penalties thing, I mean, like the other night, I believe Alabama had more penalties than Georgia, at least the last time I remember seeing it flashed on the screen. I haven't gone back and double checked. But the thing I've said about penalties before is when you play the way Georgia plays, there's a certain amount of that you just have to accept. Because if you're going to be physical, if you're going to do the kind of things physically that Georgia's going to do defensively in the pass game, offensively in the way they run their offense, you're going to just, that's like the toll you pay. There are going to be calls that go against you because of the way you play. It's built in. Don't worry about it. And that's what Kirby was saying there. Look, this is how we play. And we're, so, and he's not lying when he says that they were going to call it different. When I sat at SEC Media Days, every year, the head of officiating in the SEC comes up and gives a presentation about what happened last year, how they've changed the rules for this year, what they're emphasizing, what they're looking at. One of the things that they talk about is something that Georgia does a lot, which is that stem move across the defensive line when they move right before the snap. When is that a penalty? When it's not, is it part of what you do? And he even referenced Georgia as they aren't trying to draw somebody off because it's something they do all of the time. So maybe they're giving Georgia a pass right there on that one, because I've seen it called in a lot of other games when teams move like that. So Kirby's telling you, look, they told us we were going to do, we're going to look at these things. And so maybe they are calling it a little differently, but some of it's just baked in when you play the way Georgia plays. As to the tight ends, he makes a good point. Plays were made, plays were not made. It seems like whenever Oscar Delp was in the game, the ball, like the other night, the ball just didn't, it wasn't a good throw. Like he was open, he ran his route, and then he didn't have an opportunity to make a play because it was a bad ball. And then when Lawson Lucky got his touchdown, that was a heck of a catch, a great adjustment on the ball in the air, and he made a really good play. And we've seen Lawson over the course of the season make more good plays. Sometimes it just shakes out that way, that the guy who happens to be in the game gets the ball that comes his way, and the other guy, something happens and the ball doesn't come his way, or there's some, other factor. So on the whole, though, I have yet to see, and this is just my observation, I have yet to see the transfer from Stanford, Jurasic, do much that has benefited Georgia. Now, I'm not knocking his effort or anything, but I saw him the other night just whiffing on blocks again, getting completely blown up, just not, like it's just not working. And as far as I know, he's only been targeted like once this year. So, I would love to think that the 5-star freshman that's there could just, overcome him. But there is something to have to be said for experience, and he does have that, and he has shown he's a playmaker. But so far, it just hasn't shown up in the Georgia red and black, and it's been Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky, and the room's been fine. It's been fine. But I think that if you ask any Georgia fan, they're just going to say, well, I'm underwhelmed. And again, I'm not knocking the guys in their effort, just in terms of production and what we've seen in the blocking game. They've been fine. I wouldn't say it's anything more than that. And they need to continue to improve and make plays.
Kirby, this team loses so rarely. Is there anything you have to do differently psychologically this week so that this loss doesn't linger and affect the next game?
I don't think so. I think we have a very set routine here, and we don't make our routine based on outcomes. So whatever number of wins we've had prior to this one, we did the same thing we're going to do today. And I really believe in that process. I believe in, telling them the truth about the opponent. You tell them the strengths and weaknesses of who you're about to play, and then you coach every week the same.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's an answer that any one of us could have given, but I truly believe that there's absolute truth in everything that Kirby Smart just said, which is why I actually feel good about how the team is going to show up against Auburn this week. It's something I've talked about a lot, and I generally refer to it as the process, but more than that, I talk about the systems that are in place, right? And then the processes that come off of those systems. That is why Georgia has been as successful as they have been. That and good players, good leadership, good coaching. But all of those things fall into the super systems that are in place. And Kirby put those in place. So if you hear me or anybody else say, in Kirby we trust, that's why. It's not because he is anything other than a man. He's a good football coach. But it's the systems that make the difference. And that's what he's going to lean on when times are tough. That's what systems give you. You don't have to be flailing, looking for an answer. You know the answer. Go to work.
Match up with a team that's got some really good young receivers. What are your impressions of Malcolm Simmons and Cam Coleman, what they've shown?
Fast, athletic, great size. I mean, they were phenomenal players coming out. And they both have special attributes in terms of ball skills, playmaking ability, speed, dynamic receivers, and those guys you want to catch them while they're young. You want to catch them when they're early in the season, not as they're getting seasoned vets of the SEC. You can see these guys growing up on tape as they make more and more plays.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier. Auburn is a team that can hurt you. They have playmakers. And it's just like he's talking about with his own team. As KJ Bolden or any of these other freshmen get more experience, you're going to see them be better. Same goes with those wide receivers. So for Auburn. So, they are dangerous enough to hurt you. And if Georgia doesn't do what they need to do on Saturday, this is going to be way more close than Georgia fans will tell you they think it should be.
Update on Jordan Hall, Kobe White, and Leonard Humphreys.
Yeah, hopeful that all of them are able to play.
That's great news.
Kirby, you talked about communication being an emphasis during the bye week. How would you assess how the offensive line did that on Saturday as well as playing without Tate?
The offensive line did some really good things. I thought we challenged them to communicate better. We had better communication, especially in the front. We were able to run the ball with some success there early while it was still relative. It's hard to evaluate the offensive line in that game because of the way the game went. Now, they did some good things and some things they can do better, but it's a different evaluation because it became such a different kind of game.
True, but to that point, exactly to that point, think about the kind of game that it was, and then look at what they did based on that. Think about the entire second half. Everybody in the stadium knows that Georgia's going to have to throw the football. Think about what they showed you. Wide receivers got open. Offensive linemen manned up, picked up blitzes and protections. Carson climbed in the pocket and made throws down the field. Those are all tremendous signs if you're gauging what Georgia had to improve on and do when everybody in the stadium knew they were going to do it. So, yeah, Kirby's telling you the truth. It's hard to gauge the overall performance, but he told us they communicated better. How do we know that with our eyes? Because we saw them pick up those blitzes and do better in pass pro in the second half when everybody knew that that's what Georgia had to do. So, again, there's a lot of that there that's in another video that, we can talk about and break down a different way. But actually, I was pretty heartened, really heartened by what I saw from the offensive line as a whole coming out of that game, with the caveat that Kirby just said there. I mean, there are certain things they were asked to do, had to do, didn't get to show more of. But on the whole, I was pleased with how they performed. There were moments, of course, where I wasn't, but on the whole, I felt pretty good about it.
Kirby, I saw where Auburn leads the league in yards per completion, and obviously you mentioned Coach Freeze. Is there anything unique he does or something that kind of typifies one of his offenses?
Yeah, it's the RPO game. He's hung his hat on the ability to have RPOs, and I think he's done a good job adjusting to where it's not just that. For a while, he was an RPO guy. When RPOs came out, he was ahead of the game at doing those. He's evolved. He still does those. He still has the quarterback make decisions on plays, whether to throw it or run it, because you can take advantage of defenses doing that. But he's added new wrinkles and twists that you see in the NFL, you see across college football, using motions and eye candy and sorts of things to create an advantage or create a leverage or a mismatch. So he's done a good job evolving while keeping the RPO game. The RPO game is the biggest difference. They are fully committed to being able to do and throw RPOs.
Yeah, well, kind of give you a look into what to look at for the game on Saturday. And the other part there is obviously Freeze has evolved. I mean, you either evolve or you die. That's how it goes in college football. And so the way teams defend that has also evolved. The way Georgia specifically defends that has also evolved in how they use their safeties. So it's always a cool chess game when you've got a coach that does have some skill on the other side as far as being a scheme guy. To be able to see how you match up against it. So that's something that's definitely fun to watch. It's a game inside the game.
When you were walking off the field against Alabama, you mentioned you needed to work on Georgia's edge containment. What did you do in the second half, and what do you need to do ahead of facing Auburn?
Well, some of that scheme, some of that's player was shared. And so, improvement of, what we're calling based on where they're attacking and how we're playing it technique-wise is a combination of things you can improve on those. But, the common fan likes to talk about contain, but contain is built on the call and a lot of things outside of just keep contained. It's not that simple. There's defenses where you're built to go underneath, defenses where you're built to keep it with the secondary. Sometimes it's a corner, sometimes it's a linebacker, sometimes it's a defensive end. It's a shared responsibility that we all have to get better at.
Yeah, and you know this. I mean, it feels weird doing these videos because so much of this is exactly what Coach says it is. It's never one thing. It's always an understanding. It's a lot of things. And just a little shout out to anybody who plays defensive end for the University of Georgia, or even in, as Coach just told you, like an outside linebacker position specifically. Like those dudes, it's almost impossible to be right. Right? Like if the play goes away or you got a step down inside and that defensive end has to squeeze and now you've got, blockers coming at you, you have to take them on. And oh, by the way, you have to watch the quarterback too. And, don't let him get outside you while you're taking on a 300-pound man coming from your inside. Like it is almost impossible to be right. So when you see a defensive end or an outside linebacker make an outstanding play like MYKEL Williams did against Clemson, where he took on the blocker, he squoze, took on the blocker, then got upfield and pressed the quarterback, made a tackle for loss. Understand what a tremendous football play that is. So yeah, it's always more than one thing, but that is a hard thing to do in today's college football, is play defensive end or outside linebacker and all the responsibilities that you have to cover right there. It is when you got a player that can make those plays, then you have a truly special player.
Coach Payton THORNE did a good job against you guys last year over there. How do you evaluate his play coming into this game? Obviously, the interceptions have been up, and is that what you You expect him to play at quarterback Saturday?
I think the guy's a really good football player and a really good athlete. And you know, whatever noise or criticism they get from people, I don't respond to that because I watch what's on tape. He played really well against us last year. The 3 games I've seen him play this year, he has done a tremendous job of knowing when to go with his feet and when to make throws, decision making. He's a really good quarterback that's a good athlete, which when you have that combination along with the skill players they have, it becomes hard to defend.
Yeah, and this is just one of those things. Again, it's obvious if you watch him play. Some of those throws, you're like, oh, wow, that looks bad. But it's always something, right? The quarterback, those young freshmen may have run the wrong route. Maybe they didn't bend a route off the way they were supposed to, and that turns into an interception. Or you get a batted ball. So any number of things can count to turnovers. But if you're a Georgia fan and you're running around this week throwing around phrases like Payton Thorne's garbage or he can't play or any other word you want to use to try to insult the young man and his efforts and abilities, just understand that obviously the man who gets paid millions of dollars to assess a player's capability just told you that he's a good football player who's making good decisions. He's a veteran football player. And he's the kind of guy that can absolutely hurt you if you don't do what you're supposed to do. Witness last season. I don't know what else you need to see. I mean, every game takes place in a silo. The game before it and after it doesn't matter. Last year's games certainly don't matter. The Dogs have to be ready to go to play Payton and Auburn this Saturday.
Kirby, getting back to the offense in the first half of games this season, not just this game, what can you as a coaching staff do to, get better performance, do you think?
Put together, packages of plays that sequence, making sure the players understand exactly, what the plan is, how to do them. And, each game's been different. The Clemson game was different than the Kentucky game. The Kentucky game was different than the Alabama. The Alabama game, the first play of the game, we have a great play, open up, and then we have a shot play that we think is going to work, and we don't hit it. Then we have an OPI that's rarely called, but it's called, and then you're behind the 8 ball. But it's not that it was unsuccessful. It was that hey, we had a plan to attack. Didn't hit on some of those. You got to come back the next drive and flip the field. I'm always looking at it of, did we create field position advantage if we weren't explosive? We did in the first drive. But then we didn't for a while, and there was a little bit of lack of communication. So there's a lot of things that go into that, and I think it's very clear that we got to, execute and communicate better. But I also think we have the players to do it with. I'm very confident in our offense and our offensive players.
Well, that right there, he's just telling you the truth. They hit him for a big play on the first play. Carson makes a great throw. He makes an outstanding throw on the shot play, and it's just not executed in that area and didn't make the catch. If he does, Carson starts 2 for 2 for 66 yards. So you just don't know how that changes everything. If it does. Maybe it doesn't. The defense still had their issues. But starting fast, again, that's just one of those things that people say. At the end of the day, it comes down to execution, emotion, communication, all of those things.
More question. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can give us an update on this, but MYKEL, after coming back for that first game, 25 snaps, where is he? How do you feel like he played on Saturday?
Yeah, he's sore is all I know. I talked to him. He was sore, but don't know much more. I'll know a lot more today.
On MYKEL Williams, on that point specifically, that young man was nowhere near 100%, the other night against Alabama. But the fact that he not only played, but played as much as he did and had the impact that he had, it just needs to be applauded. So hopefully there are no setbacks on his injury. Hopefully he can get his recovery and overcome that soreness and continue his road to recovery, because MYKEL Williams is all about this team. And yes, he wants to be successful, but for the betterment of his teammates and his team. So count me a MYKEL Williams fan. I certainly hope that he recovers well and can get back out on the field 100% and have the kind of season we all hope that he can have. So that was it. That was Coach talking about the Deep South's oldest rivalry this upcoming Saturday, Georgia-Auburn. Enjoy the games, and I'll talk to you again soon. Dogs.
Told them, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.